product rule and quotient rule. First, the product rule, because it's a little bit easier. Right? Multiplication is a little bit easier than division, so it makes sense that the multiply rule is a little bit easier than the divide rule. First of all, how it doesn't work. d dx. Remember what that means? Take the derivative of. So if I want to take the derivative of f times g, it would be really, really, really nice if that was equal to f prime times g prime. But it doesn't work that way. Like, this would be no lesson at all if that was the case. We would just say, yeah, just take the derivatives and multiply them together. But it doesn't work that way. So here's the rule. If you want to take the derivative of two functions that are multiplied, so it's not take the derivative of the pieces. That doesn't work. Here's the rule. F of x times g prime of x plus g of x times f prime of x. Now, when you're memorizing that and when you're making like a note to yourself on the test, most of the time you're not going to put all those parentheses x's. You're just going to do fg prime plus gf prime. And you'll know what that means. It's just kind of shorthand. Another way that people remember it is the first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. That's sort of the word way to remember it. So if you're more into words, maybe that's helpful. If you're more into just memorizing the symbols, maybe you got like a photographic memory, you can just fg prime plus gf prime. And the good news about the product rule is that because it's addition, if you get those two backwards, how will that affect your answer? It won't. So if you do second times derivative of the first plus first times the derivative of the second, it won't matter. So product rule is not too hard to remember. You just take one function, multiply by the derivative of the other, and then add vice versa. So memorizing this one isn't bad because if you get the order wrong, who cares? It's the same thing. Let's do some examples. So y equals 4x minus 2x squared times 3x minus 5. Well, let's call the first thing f and the second thing g. And so in order to do or use the product rule, I need f prime and g prime, and then I'll put everything together. So just looking at f, just looking at that first function, what's the derivative of 4x minus 2x squared? Well, let's start over back with Emily. What's the derivative of 4x minus 2x squared? Use the product, not the product rule, use the power rule, the shortcut rule.
So is that whole thing the power of 1?
Yep, but I don't need, it is, this whole thing is to the power of 1, but I'm not worried about that. I'm just looking at 4x minus 2x squared.
Oh, okay. So then it's, because the x is the power of 1. So
Okay, yes.
yeah, so then it's just 4 minus 4?
Got it.
Okay.
Good. It's okay, we're still learning the power rule while we're using it to learn other stuff. Good, yeah, 4 minus 4x. Mark, how about the derivative of g? So just looking at 3x minus 5, what's the derivative of 3x minus 5? 3. All right, now we're ready to put it together. So y prime is the first times the derivative of the second. So the first is 4x minus 2x squared. The derivative of the second is 3. Plus, then the other way around, the second, 3x minus 5, times the derivative of the first, 4 minus 4x. Save stop, right? Otherwise, we've got to distribute and FOIL and collect and do all sorts of algebra. It varies. Sometimes we do give the answers as sort of a safe stop spot, just so you don't have to spend 5 minutes doing the algebra. But sometimes we will ask you to, and you'll be able to tell by your answer choices if we've multiplied it out or not. Uh-oh, lost my place here. 12x first, outside, inside, inside. Oh, it doesn't have an x on it. Last. So yes, it does take an extra moment to multiply it all out, collect like terms. So negative 18x squared. 12 plus 12 plus 20 would be 44x, and then minus 20. There's your multiple choice. Back of the book, and CalcChat likes to do that. So again, if you're on your own and you don't have to do it, you don't need to do all of that stuff. If you're looking in the back of the book, I don't even know that you have a backup book. If you look at it in CalcChat, it's going to give this as the final answer. But CalcChat also shows all their work. So somewhere in there, CalcChat will have this, and you'll know that I can stop there. I'm good. By the way, there is a way to avoid using the product rule on this problem. So way back up here, if you're really averse to the product rule, what could you have done at the very beginning of this problem? Yeah, you could have FOILed that. So you could have avoided the product rule by FOILing. This one, I don't know which one's easier, because FOIling is not that hard, and then you'd have an easy derivative to take. But we can also force you into the product rule. So if you see one where you want to avoid the product rule, and by FOIling, that's fine, because I can write a problem like number 2 here that forces you into the product rule. X cubed times sine of x. So there's no way to multiply that to avoid the product rule. You're going to have to use the product rule. Okay, I'm kind of getting it set up for you. I want you to try to finish it from there. So find f prime times g prime, and then use the product rule to piece it all together. dy dx is just another way to say y prime. So again, one of those places where it's new information, but it's just a new term we got to be familiar with. All right, first times derivative of the second plus second times derivative of the first. And there's my answer. And again, if you get them backwards, who cares, because it's adding, it doesn't matter. I don't know that you could simplify that any other than, I mean, if you're really, and the book does this, and so does CalcChat, they look for any way to add extra algebra steps. Do you see anything algebra I could do to that? I don't even know that it's simplifying it. You could factor out an x squared. Why would you do that? I don't know. I think that's simple enough, though, that if you got to here and then you started looking at your answer choices and you saw this, I think you'd be okay. Let's do one more product rule and then we'll go to quotient rule. X minus 2 to the 5th times x plus 1 to the 7th. Could you avoid the product rule on this problem? Yes. Would you want to avoid the product rule? No, because to avoid the product rule, you'd have to do this thing out to the 5th, x minus 2 5 times, then x plus 1 7 times, and then somehow get them all together. Possible, yes. Likely to make a mistake. Also, yes. So let's do the product rule. So this is a little bit different. What do you think f prime is? You're probably going to be right. Emma, take a guess for f prime. Put you on the spot.
Is it like 5x to the 4? Or wait, do you put the 5 out in front of the parentheses?
Yep.
And then you put a 4 to the power 4?
Yep. So it's a little different because it's not just x there, it's x minus 2. But it works the same way. So 5, x minus 2 to the 4th. All right, Tierney, Emma took the hard one. G prime is the same process. So Tierney, what's G prime?
7 and parentheses x plus 1 to the 6.
Yep. So still power rule, a little bit different, but same power rule. So dy dx, first times derivative of the second, x minus 2 to the 5th, times 7, x plus 1 to the 6th, plus the other way around, the second, x plus 1 to the 7th, times derivative of the first. Yuck. And again, if you get them backwards, it doesn't matter because you're adding. I'm going to try to always do it the same way. First times derivative of the second. Once we've done it for a couple weeks, I might slip up and do it the other way, and hopefully it won't bother anybody. Okay, here's the real reason I picked this problem. That's a safe stop, and definitely a good safe stop. Happy with that. Calc chat, back of book, and definitely one on the test is going to test your algebra skills a little bit by factoring out. So how many x minus 2's can I factor out?
4.
I can take out 4 of them. And how many x plus 1's can I factor out? 6 of them. So now we got to be real careful about what's left over.
Should we factor that because of the exponent? Like you knew that there was an exponent.
Right. I took out as many as I could. So on this first term, I took out 4 of the x minus 2's. So there's 1 left. And the 7's left. I took out all of the x plus 1's from the first term. From the second term, I took out 6 of the x plus 1's, so that leaves 1 of the x plus 1's. 5 still there. How many of the x minus 2's did I take? All of them. That's the best answer. They're all gone. So inside there, if we clean that up, 7x minus 14 plus 5x plus 5 would be 12x minus 9. So this is really more of an algebra problem than a calculus problem. So there's my multiple choice answer. So that's one where, we like it when you get to the safe stop, you start looking at multiple choice answers, and usually you can see, in your brain you can skip an algebra step or two and figure out what the answer is. But on this one, getting from the safe stop to the multiple choice answer, I don't think there's anybody that can look at this answer and then go look at your multiple choice answers and be like, oh yeah, that's it. Because you end up thinking, okay, I see the x minus 2 and the x plus 1. Where did that come from? Well, it came from factoring. So that's an annoying one, but that's why I wanted to show it to you, so it wouldn't be a problem when you see it on the test.
So there is a question like that?
There is a question like that on the test. Really similar to that. Again, I remember that it's a multiple choice question, and I remember that I give lots of partial credit because I will see that 95% of the people will get here, and then how many percent of the people will get here? Hopefully equally 95%, but maybe not. So product rule, first times derivative of the second plus the other way around. That's just the easiest way to remember it. Quotient rule. Again, you can't just divide, it doesn't work. So here's how we'll do the quotient rule. You can't divide the pieces, I should say. So if I want the derivative of a quotient, here's the rule. Well, again, division is more complicated than multiplication, right? Like think back into elementary school. Multiplication was pretty straightforward. You learn that. And then division, it's like multiplication backwards. It's a little more complicated because you got remainders or fractions. The idea that division is more complicated carries over to here. G of x times f prime of x minus, to me it's easy to remember that the quotient rule has a minus in it because multiplication sort of matches with addition, division sort of matches with subtraction, minus f of x times g prime of x. So there's some similarities there with the we're not even done with it yet, but some similarities with the product rule because you got one times the derivative of the other, and then the other times the derivative of the vice versa thing. But then what really throws it off is all over g squared. G of x squared. That's the official way to write it out. Most people, the slang way to write it out is to drop all those parentheses x's because that just clutters things up. Gf prime minus fg prime over g squared. All right, now how you remember this, like the big trick is, do you get the right one first in the top? Like everybody knows it's over g squared. Everybody knows it's 1 times the derivative of the other minus the other way around. It's just the mistake happens of, well, how do I know if gf prime comes first or if fg prime comes first? And here's my way of remembering this, and this is good news for this class especially because 8 of you already know this rule. 3 of you need to know this rule in order for your relationships to work. Okay? And you're like, what? Where did we just took a weird turn. So the girls know this. The boys, you may not know this yet. You need to figure this out. If you want your relationship to work, you got to keep the GF first. Okay? It's kind of sexist, whatever. And I told this rule to a guy at the that was presenting at a conference. He's like, "Oh, I don't like that rule. That feels sexist to me." I'm like, okay, maybe it is. Apologies. I'm just trying to get you a way to remember what comes first. You got to keep the GF first, or else it's not going to work in relationships or in the quotient rule. And yeah, that's on video, so I guess if I'm not here tomorrow, you'll know what happened.
Oh.
All right, let's do one with the quotient rule. Y equals 5x plus 2 over x squared minus 1. Again, at least early on, I like to label them, and out to the side, write out f prime and g prime. Once you've done these 100 times, you might start doing this stuff in your head. Don't do that yet. F prime, I'm trying to go fast a little bit here. F prime would be 5. What about g prime? 2x. And so gf prime comes first. 5 times x squared minus 1. Minus the other way around. 2x, 5x plus 2, all over g squared. Safe stop, yay. We'll leave that one alone. Multiple choice, maybe you distribute, collect like terms, go from there. All right, this next little set of problems is to help us figure out what we should do first. Product, quotient, or algebra. So we're actually not going to work these problems. We're just going to say if we would rather do product, quotient, or algebra for these problems. So if I had x plus 5 times x squared plus 7, is that a product rule problem, a quotient rule problem, or should we do algebra first problem? And for this one, I would accept 2 answers. All right, you could do algebra, because foiling that wouldn't be that bad, and then take a derivative. What's your other option? The product rule. So you could foil first, or you could do the product rule. How about f of x equals x squared plus 3x plus 7 all over x? It's another one where I'll accept 2 answers for what you do first. So what? You could use the quotient rule, but you could also use algebra. Right? You would just divide them all by x, and then you wouldn't have to use the quotient rule. So it's kind of your choice. Like, do you want to do the algebra and then avoid the quotient rule, or do you want to avoid the algebra and jump straight to the quotient rule? It doesn't matter. You're going to end up at the same spot. One more of these. Sine of x plus x to the 5th over x plus 2. Yeah, you have to use the quotient rule on that. So on some of these problems, you can avoid the quotient rule. Like, you're like, oh, that's ugly and terrible. I don't want to use the quotient rule. Let me use algebra. Okay, that's fine on some of them, but we can easily write problems that algebra won't work. You are forced to do the quotient rule on ones like number 3. All right, page 125, 1 through 12 all, 13 through 29 odd, number 30, 35 to 41, this is all odds now, 45 to 51, 63, 65, 73, odd. I know, that's a lot. They go quick, though, because now that you know the shortcut rule, these are pretty quick.
So is this part of the stuff that's due on Friday?
This is not part of what's due Friday. That's exactly what I was going to say next. So what's due Friday is the stuff up to that. That's the short way to say it. The more official way to say it is page 103 twice and page 114. Page 103 from Friday and 103 and 114 from Tuesday is what's due on Friday. So give page 125 a try, but it's not due Friday. We'll go over it Friday. Oh, and I will bring candy on Friday.
Just for fun?
Just for